I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with John Hoffman and Janet Tobias, the directors of the documentary Fauci on which is currently streaming on Disney Plus as part of our Meet the Experts panels on TV documentaries. John, I want to send the first question to you, and then Janet afterwards. How did you each first come to know of Dr. Anthony Fauci?
Wow. I first learned about Dr. Fauci in the early 1990s. I was working at New York Hospital running their HIV/AIDS inpatient and outpatient program. And one of the young doctors in that clinic left to go join Dr. Fauci's lab at the NIH. So that was the very first time I learned of him and started following his very important career in HIV/AIDS. Where I was working in this this time in this clinic at a time when that Dr. Fauci calls the dark years, when everybody was dying. It was a terrible, terrible time. But then go forward many years, I made a series about the research hospital that's on the grounds of the NIH called Building 10, the Clinical Research Center. And Dr. Fauci continues to do research and see patients there. And I interviewed him for that, along with his wife, who was the medical ethicist for that hospital.
And Janet, how did you first come to know of him?
I think, like lots of Americans, I sort of would see his name, in reading about epidemics or outbreaks, first in AIDS, then in Ebola. And we did a film, our group, on the 21st century threat of pandemics before COVID happened. And at the end of that film, Dr. Fauci and I and a couple other people were on a panel, and I met him, and I was brave enough to say, could we do a project together? And we started on a project on AIDS in the modern era. And then I thought, wow, someone should do a film on Dr. Fauci's life. And then John and I found each other and we began.
And actually, I'll put this question to you, Janet. How did you and John connect and end up making this documentary together?
We had our group had started working on the beginnings of a film about Dr. Fauci before COVID. And then COVID exploded, and it was clear that Tony was at the center. He was at the White House every day in press conferences. He was at the center of the storm. And John Hoffman, who I'd met once before, reached out to me, and I knew of his illustrious career doing health documentaries at HBO and also having worked with everyone at NIH. And he said, I just asked about doing a film about Dr. Fauci, and you just started something. And we decided to pair up because I knew we needed to pair up with the smartest, most knowledgeable, best filmmakers. And we added Ali Moss, our producer, to the group in order to do this film during a very intense, crazy time, which was essentially the beginning of lockdown, was when we went full tilt.
And John, I'll put this to you first. Despite being familiar with Dr. Fauci for many years, was there anything you learned over the process of making this documentary that really surprised you about him?
Well, yes, and it is the way that he is still so impacted by the loss of human life. He's a doctor. His life is devoted to saving lives. So he is deeply affected by not only the loss of a single life, but the loss of hundreds of thousands and now over 1 million American lives and many more around the world. And when we interviewed him the first time, and it was focused on the early part of his life and what I refer to as the dark years of AIDS. And I asked him to go back to that time. Unexpectedly, he became, he choked up as he was telling the story of a man who went blind from his HIV/AIDS and then eventually died. And that was a surprise. This man that, in studying the archive and making the film, we were watching hundreds, thousands of media appearances by him over the years. And he never once displayed that kind of emotion. Occasionally, he would get frustrated with an interviewer who was exhibiting sort of an intolerance, a kind of homophobia, and he would challenge the interviewer. But that was the only kind of sort of emotion that he displayed. So that was a surprise. But it showed us immediately in that first interview that he understood the seriousness of what we were doing and how different it was than any other media appearance.
And Janet, I'll put this one to you. It's interesting to see someone reflect on something, in their past. And I think one of the starkest things I've ever seen in anything is the old footage of Dr. Fauci meeting with ACT UP activists back in the 80s. And what was it like to see him recount that and possibly look on it 30 years in the future?
John said it exactly right. I think what people don't know is that Tony wears his heart on his sleeve a lot once you cross the trust barrier. And so he also got choked up. We played him his speech at that meeting in audio, and he got choked up listening to it, because I think he has become really good friends with some of the key ACT UP activists. You saw a number of them, David, Peter in the film. Peter is one of his best friends. And to, I think, look back at his history of what they were all able to do together to build bridges and then to change research. And they changed it not only for AIDS patients, but they changed it for breast cancer patients and all other patients and rare disease patients, because they created a model where patients in the community must be part of research decisions and the scientific process.
And John, I'll put this to you first, and then Janet, please add anything you would like to. But what personality traits of Dr. Fauci do you think are trademarked to him, but he, when you have to do so much media like he has done, you kind of have to put up a guard and put up a very serious facade. Is there something that you think people would be pleasantly surprised to know about his personality?
I think that people would appreciate knowing how much of a family man he is, how devoted he is to his daughters and wife. I think people would appreciate knowing what a great sense of humor he has. And there's material that Janet shot that, when I explain to you why we didn't use it, I think everybody will understand. It was Tony at work on a Saturday, spending the entire day working at his computer, often as a stand-up desk, listening and singing along to Barbra Streisand. And it was just, I found it just hilarious to watch. And he's absolutely in the zone. He's working hard. He's writing papers. He's editing text, but he's just singing along. We never could get the rights to that, so it's not in the film.
And Janet, is there anything? I don't think anything could top that, but is there anything that you feel personally about that?
I will add that he also plays the village people and really enjoys the village people on weekends to work, right? When we all heard it, we're like, really? Awesome, the village people. He's quite mischievous. He has a really, as John said, really good sense of humor. And he also is, on the more serious side, to be honest, one in a lifetime of seeing and meeting a lot of hardworking people, he may be the hardest working, most disciplined human being about work I have ever seen. It's, you know, at now over 80, it is stunning to see day after day after day.
Well, John and Janet, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
Thank you.